My story is as old as time itself, a tale of love turned into disillusionment. Yet I can't seem to let go or find peace with it. I married a man who had just joined the church. At the time, it felt like a sign, a symbol of a new beginning for both of us. I knew he had a turbulent past, but I was 23, he was 24, and I was madly in love. His flaws seemed insignificant against his charisma, his wit, and the sense of security he gave me. We met at a youth gathering at church. He stood against the wall, arms crossed, a faint smirk on his face. There was something bold yet vulnerable in his eyes. I felt drawn to him like a magnet. A month later, he proposed. Everything happened so quickly, like a whirlwind, and I let it sweep me away. Our first years of marriage can be summed up in one word: survival. Both of us were strong-willed. I was stubborn, and he was impulsive and unpredictable. We argued over trivial things, but every night ended with reconciliation. Still, cracks were already forming. He often disappeared for long walks, came back irritable, and said he needed time for himself. When I found out I was pregnant, I thought it would be a turning point. The birth of our son was supposed to bring us closer. Instead, it marked the beginning of our worst struggles. A few months after our son was born, I noticed strange behavior in my husband. He frequently disappeared with his friend, returned home late, and avoided conversation. One night, while he was asleep on the couch, I found a small bag of white powder in his pocket. My stomach dropped. "What's this?" I asked, holding the bag in front of him. "It's not what you think," he snapped, snatching it from my hands. "It's old. I haven't used in a long time." I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe that it was a one-time mistake from his past. But soon, I noticed how quickly money was disappearing. I worked multiple jobs to support us, but we were always short on cash. One night, as I was putting our son to bed, there was a knock at the door. It was his friend. He looked worn out, his eyes darting nervously. "Do you have any money? We need to fix something," he said. "What needs fixing?" I asked cautiously. "The car, of course," he replied with a smirk. I knew they were lying. The next day, I tried to confront my husband. He became angry, yelling that I didn't trust him. That's when it happened. He raised his hand to me. That night, I packed my things, took our son, and moved in with my mother. I felt betrayed and broken, but thought that maybe this would be a wake-up call for him. A week later, I found out I was pregnant with our second child. It was like a thunderclap out of nowhere. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the test, unable to believe what was happening. We kept in touch because of the pregnancy, but we lived separately. Sometimes he visited, bringing gifts for our son, swearing he would change. His promises sounded so sincere that I started to believe in a miracle again. But time passed, and nothing changed. He kept asking for money, claiming it was for debts, but his spending only grew. One day I told him, "You need to prove that you've changed. I can't just take your word for it anymore." "I'll do anything for us," he declared passionately. And once again, I allowed myself to be deceived. A month before the war began, we tried living together again. He swore he was clean and even took a drug test. I wanted to believe him. Then the war started. We relocated to another region, and he volunteered for the military. It seemed like his chance to prove he could be a man, a father, a pillar of support. For a while I believed him. But eventually, I learned the truth. He continued his old ways, even at the front lines. That was the final straw. I packed up the children and moved to another city. "If you want to be with us, you need to prove it with actions, not words," I told him. "I'll do everything for you and the kids," he repeated. 2 weeks later, he texted me. "I've found someone else. You're right. It won't work between us." Those words shattered my heart. He admitted he had never loved me, that I was just a habit. I filed for divorce. He disappeared from our lives entirely. Later, I learned he was living with another woman who also had children. On one hand, I felt relief that such a person was no longer in my life. On the other, it hurt deeply. It hurt to think of the faith I had, the love I poured into a relationship that was doomed from the start. I often find myself drifting back to the past, reliving moments when it felt like everything could have been different. I know I need to let go, to find peace, but for now, that feels impossible.